Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. The evening had the kind of softness that hosts always hope will land well with their guests. Warm amber lighting glowed from the sconces Gavin insisted were artisanal. Soft jazz filled the background with curated elegance, and the table was staged as if photographed for a magazine, linen runners, candles, and too many forks for anyone sane. We were 3 courses into the dinner party. The chatter had been fluid, the kind of meaningless social warmth people force themselves to show when they want to appear connected. But beneath that surface, beneath the polite facade, there were fractures, not the obvious ones. Those are loud, reactive, dramatic. Ours were quiet, buried under practiced smiles. Olivia and I sat across from each other, the standard arrangement at gatherings like this, neither too close nor too far, looking the part of a couple joining an elegant evening. But the distance between us was a canyon. We had learned to perform, to sit shoulder to shoulder in public, to exchange the occasional smile, to pass plates, to finish anecdotes in harmony. But there was a coldness beneath the shell that only we could feel, a coldness built drip by drip, glance by glance, resentment by resentment. From anyone else's vantage point, we were composed. From mine, we were brittle. Jesse was laughing at his own joke for the 4th time that night, some story about his sourdough starter that had apparently become a living organism with an attitude. The kind of story people pretend is hilarious because they've had too much wine and not enough substance. But while he chuckled at his charming domestic struggle, Olivia leaned forward, swirling her wine glass slowly, deliberately, the way she always did when she was preparing to land a line she believed would hit socially well. She said loudly enough that every person at the table would hear her whether they wanted to or not. At least Jesse still gets some. It's been, 2 months for us, Aaron? She delivered it with a wide, deliberate smile, theatrical, almost gleeful. The room froze, not literally, but socially, an immediate vacuum. Laughter died midair, utensils halted. Even Tessa, who had the reflexive hosting instincts of a trained diplomat, paused with her hand hovering over the breadbasket like she was caught between reaching forward or backing away. I set my fork down gently, deliberately, because movement seemed like the only thing I could properly control. The silence was thick, dense, like Olivia had pulled the plug on the evening's energy. I looked at her, really looked at her. She tilted her head and raised her eyebrows in exaggerated amusement, as though expecting me to laugh along, to take the blow and smile through it. She had always mistaken my restraint for passivity. She thought she could weaponize humor, make me the punchline, and still appear charming. But that night, she miscalculated. 2 months, I repeated slowly, my voice even, steady, controlled. Right, because you told me you were in pain. You said something wasn't right, that your body wasn't cooperating. You needed time. I respected that. I didn't push. I gave you space, and for you to take that, something I honored, and turn it into a punchline tonight. I paused, offering a smile that held no warmth. That's bold, Liv, but not in the way you think. A faint crack appeared in her expression. It was quick, barely there, but I saw it. A flash of uncertainty, a crack in the confidence she had wrapped herself in. Aaron, it was a joke, she said, letting out a shaky laugh. Relax, people joke about this stuff. No, I corrected calmly. You joke about this stuff because you think it makes you look witty. But tonight it didn't. It just made you look cruel. A few guests looked down at their plates. Others pretended to adjust their napkins, their glasses. Jesse reached for his wine again, slower this time, and Tessa pressed her lips into a thin line. No one was laughing anymore. The atmosphere had shifted so sharply the table itself felt off. Balance. Olivia crossed her arms, which she always did when she felt cornered. Wow, really? You're going to do this here? You already did. I replied. I'm just finishing the scene you started. Her cheeks flushed, not the embarrassed kind of red, but the irritated, defensive kind. The twitch at the corner of her jaw gave her away. I knew that twitch. It was her losing control tell. You know what? She snapped. Maybe I wouldn't have to joke about it, if there was something to joke about. Maybe if you spent more time being a husband instead of hiding in your little garage with your sketch pads. My little garage, I cut in smoothly, is the reason you get to shop at Lily and James like it's your personal closet. Her eyes widened just slightly. A nerve hit. Are we really doing this? She hissed. We already are, I said calmly. But now I understand. That joke wasn't for the table. It was a test, and you didn't expect the response you got. The room tightened again, invisible strings pulled taut between every person seated there. Olivia's eyes darted back and forth, reading the shifting social tide. She had initiated the scene, but she was losing her grip on the performance. I didn't mean no. I corrected. You meant to provoke me. You just didn't expect the truth to come back dressed in facts. Gavin cleared his throat, fumbling for a transition. Maybe we should move on to dessert, he said weakly, but the mood had been punctured too deeply. The tension had already taken root. Olivia didn't speak again for the rest of the dinner. She sat stiffly, her smile replaced by a rigid mask. And while plates were cleared and glasses were refilled, the energy of the evening never recovered. Conversation stuttered, forks scraped plates with no enthusiasm, and the soft jazz that once filled the air now felt oddly intrusive. I stayed quiet, sipping water. I didn't need to add anything. The silence was enough, and something in her recognized that. The drive home was quiet, too. She gripped the steering wheel hard, knuckles pale under the streetlights flickering through the windshield. I watched the passing skyline of Nashville shrink behind us. I knew she was rehearsing, analyzing each moment, crafting new angles to defend herself. She always rehearsed after she misplayed a scene. Once we stepped inside the house, the door barely closed before she spun around. You really couldn't just take a joke, she said sharply. I leaned against the wall, unbuttoning my collar. Is that what it was, a joke? Yes, Aaron, it's called sarcasm. Try Googling it. I know what sarcasm is, I replied. It just lands better when it isn't used as a weapon in front of friends. Oh, please, it wasn't that deep. You said, it's been 2 months, not that he's complaining. I raised a finger. That's not casual sarcasm, Olivia. That's you trying to score points publicly. She threw her hands up. God, you are so stiff sometimes. Maybe I am, I said, smirking. Maybe I need to take social classes, learn how to turn private moments into public entertainment. She froze, then smiled sweetly. Finally, some self-awareness. I tilted my head. You should sign up with me. Might help with your timing. Her smile faltered again. Wow, she murmured. I forgot you could be petty, and I forgot you could be cruel. That landed differently. For a moment, we were both still locked in a quiet that felt heavier than anything we had said aloud. When she finally turned and walked to the bedroom, saying, I'm tired, this is stupid, I followed slowly, not to argue, but because something in me refused to let this settle. She sat on the edge of the bed, taking off her earrings. You embarrassed me tonight, she muttered. You embarrassed yourself, I replied calmly. I just stopped covering for you. Her head snapped up. So what is this? Some passive-aggressive rebellion? No, I said. This is the moment I stopped pretending you respect me. She stood abruptly. Don't be dramatic. I'm being accurate. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she crawled into bed, dismissing me with a quiet, I'm not doing this. You already did. I said softly, leaving the room and shutting the door behind me. The house felt unfamiliar, not empty, just colder. Off-kilter, as though something had shifted and the furniture hadn't adjusted yet. The next morning, I found myself in an office where everything was orderly, chairs unsqueaking, coffee impeccably brewed, frames hanging perfectly. A place where mistakes didn't linger. Your prenup is airtight, Gerald said, leaning back with the confidence of a man who had seen every variation of human conflict. She walks with what she came with, nothing more. I exhaled slowly. If she fights, she loses money and time, he added. And if she signs, she walks away clean. Walking out of that building, Nashville glittered around me, tall glass structures reflecting the sharp afternoon sun. People hurried past with their own missions. I walked slower, the weight heavy but clearer than it had felt in years. By the time I got home, Olivia was in the kitchen as if nothing had changed, barefoot, scrolling her phone, sipping wine. You're home late, she said. Had an appointment. With who? Someone helping me catch up socially. I said, matching her earlier sarcasm. She blinked, then laughed. You really took that seriously. Maybe. She smirked. She thought she had won. That she'd regained control. She always misread the quiet as surrender, but the next morning, everything shifted. I placed the manila envelope on the counter. She didn't turn around. What's that? A delivery, I said. For you, she opened it. The color drained from her face. Aaron, these are divorce papers. I know. You're filing, yes, over one dinner. This wasn't about dinner. It was about respect or the lack of it. She slammed the papers down. So you've been planning this, sneaking off to lawyers. Her voice trembled with anger, disbelief, betrayal, emotions she felt entitled to feel, but had never hesitated to provoke in others. You blindsided me, she snapped. I tapped a page. You'll notice the prenup clause highlighted. She skimmed it. Her jaw tightened. You brought nothing in, I said gently, and you haven't added to anything since. It hit her like a punch. A truth she had buried under shopping bags and brunch outings. You expect me to sign this. I expect you to realize that not signing costs more. Her arms folded across her chest. I gave up so much for this marriage. You gave up nothing. I said, calm but firm. You adjusted to comfort. That's not sacrifice. She looked wounded, genuinely for the first time. Trembling, she picked up the pen and signed. No argument, no threats, no meltdown, just signing. When she whispered, you don't even look angry. I replied, I'm not, I'm done. A week later, she moved out, 2 suitcases, a makeup bag, one final slam of the door, the house exhaled. Finally, and 3 weeks later, feverish, delirious, barely standing, I reached for my phone and texted Megan, the only friend of Olivia's who ever treated me like a human being. Any chance you're free today? I think this flu wants me dead. She arrived with groceries, medicine, soup, tea, and a kind of quiet competence the house had never felt before. She cooked, cleaned up the kitchen, and sat across from me with a softness that wasn't performative. When I asked why she was doing all this, she said the words that broke something open inside me, because I've liked you for a long time. And for the first time in months, years maybe, I didn't feel alone. The morning after the restaurant call felt strangely hollow. Not dramatic, not painful even, just empty, like a room after guests leave, quiet in a way that forces you to hear things you ignored before. Her number was still blocked, her message history still frozen, her last voice, come get me please, still echoing. I woke up before sunrise, which was unusual for me. The sky was that soft grayish, blue that feels like the world is holding its breath. I made coffee but didn't drink it. I sat on the sofa but didn't really sit. My body was there. My mind was somewhere halfway between yesterday's chaos and tomorrow's uncertainty. What bothered me wasn't that she had panicked. What bothered me was why. Why did she break the boundary she asked for? Why did she call me? Why did she sound so small, so unlike the woman who blocked me? The more I replayed her trembling voice, the more I realized something uncomfortable. She wasn't asking me for help. She was surrendering to the truth she'd tried to run from. Something scared her into remembering who I was to her. Something forced vulnerability out of her. But what? The question kept circling like a bird over a carcass, never landing, just circling. Around 9:17 a.m., someone knocked on my door, not a loud knock, not impatient, a hesitant, almost guilty kind of knock. The kind of knock that says, I'm here, but I don't know if I should be. I stood up slowly, heart pacing like I'd been caught doing something wrong. When I opened the door, I didn't expect to see her, but there she was, eyes red, not just from lack of sleep, but from the kind of crying you don't admit you did. Her hair was tied messily, her lips pressed together in that way she always did when she was afraid she would say the wrong thing. She didn't step in, she didn't speak. She just stood there, holding her breath, holding herself together like one more second might shatter her. Finally, she said, "Can we talk?" 3 words, simple, but they carried the weight of everything she'd avoided. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like she was entering a library instead of the apartment she used to treat like hers. She looked around, noticing things she used to touch casually now feeling foreign to her. I didn't offer her water. I didn't offer her a seat. I waited. She sat anyway. She clasped her hands together, staring at a point on the carpet, as if her whole world was somewhere between the fibers. I shouldn't have called you yesterday, she whispered. I didn't respond. She inhaled sharply. I mean, I should have, but not like that. Not when I told you I needed space. Not after I blocked you. Still, I waited. Her voice shook slightly. I was at the restaurant with Nadia, but she left. She got upset because I wasn't really listening to her. I kept checking my phone for no reason. I kept thinking. She swallowed. And then I panicked. I don't even know why. I just suddenly felt like I needed someone grounded. Someone who wouldn't judge me. Someone who, her voice cracked. Someone safe. I finally spoke, and that someone was me. She nodded, slowly, hesitantly, like admitting it cost her something. Yes, a tear slid down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly, almost angrily. That's why I called. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I just needed you, needed. That word did something to me, something complicated, something dangerous, but I kept my voice neutral. And now, she looked up at me sharply, surprised by the question. And now, she said, I need to be honest. She took a deep breath, longer than necessary, like she was preparing for surgery. When I said I needed space, I didn't mean I wanted to leave you. I meant I wanted to be sure. Sure of what? I asked. She winced of myself, not of us, of herself. I've been overwhelmed. Work, family, expectations, my own fears, everything, and she exhaled again. You're steady, you're clear. You always know what you want, and I don't. I raised an eyebrow, so you blocked me. Her eyes filled with guilt. I blocked you because I thought if I didn't, I would keep running back to you, and then I wouldn't deal with anything. You're like this anchor, and I was scared that if I leaned on you again, I'd depend too much, I'd lose myself. I nodded slowly. She continued, I didn't block you because I was angry. I blocked you because I was afraid of how much I trust you. That sentence hit like a punch I didn't expect. Not romantic, not poetic, raw, real, afraid of how much she trusted me. She wiped another tear, and yesterday when the panic hit, when my mind went blank, I didn't call my mother, I didn't call Nadia, I didn't call anyone else. Her voice fell to a whisper. I only thought of you, a long silent stretch between us, not awkward, not heavy, just revealing. She looked up again, this time directly into my eyes. But I also know I hurt you. Yes, I said plainly. You did, she flinched. I didn't want to. I was trying to protect myself. I didn't realize I was cutting you in the process. My jaw tightened involuntarily. She noticed, I didn't expect you to come yesterday, she added softly, but when you didn't, I realized something. I leaned forward slightly. What did you realize? She hesitated. That losing you felt worse than any panic I've ever had. The room felt like it paused. Even the air held still. That's why I came this morning, she said, because space stopped being helpful. It became unbearable. She expected me to take her back with open arms. I knew her well enough to see that hope in her eyes, but I also knew that if I didn't speak honestly, we would repeat the same cycle later. So I said the one thing she didn't expect. Needing space wasn't the problem. Blocking me was. Her breath caught. I continued. You shut me out completely. No explanation, no trust, no conversation. You didn't make space. You made distance. A tear slid down her cheek again, slower this time. And I'm willing to forgive that, I added, but not forget it. She nodded, accepting the hit because she knew she deserved it. Tell me what you need from me now, I said. She inhaled shakily, then answered, I need to rebuild trust, not yours, mine. I need to trust that I won't run again, that when I feel overwhelmed, I'll talk instead of disappearing. She looked at me with a kind of vulnerable bravery I hadn't seen in weeks, and I need you to let me try. I walked toward her slowly. Her shoulders stiffened, then softened. I sat down beside her, not close enough to touch, close enough to be present. You came, I said, that's a start. She let out a shaky exhale. Can we take it slow? She asked. Not slow, I corrected. Steady. She smiled faintly. Steady is good. Her hand moved slightly, almost reaching out, but she stopped herself. This time I reached. I placed my hand over hers, not pulling her closer, just acknowledging the moment. She whispered, "I missed you." I answered honestly, "I missed the version of you who didn't run." She nodded, accepting the truth like medicine that stings before it heals. "I'm here now," she said. We talked for hours, not about what happened, but about everything that came before it. Her childhood, her fear of failure, her anxiety about disappointing people, the pressure she carried silently. The way she thought strength meant solving everything alone, the way she misinterpreted dependence as weakness, and how I fit into that fear. By the time the sun began setting, she looked lighter, like shedding truth made her breathe easier. Before she left, she stopped at the door and turned. "Can I text you tonight, just to check in?" I nodded. Yes, she smiled, small, relieved, almost shy, and for the first time in weeks, her smile reached her eyes. Her text came at 9:43 p.m., not dramatic, not emotional, just 4 simple words. "I made it home." I replied, "Good." Another message came. "Thank you for today." I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "One step at a time." She sent one last message. "I won't run again." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some promises are meant to breathe quietly before they are believed. Over the following days, something shifted, not dramatically, not romantically, but steadily. We talked not constantly, but consistently. She shared not everything, but honestly. She showed up. Not perfectly, but willingly. And slowly, cautiously, trust rebuilt its foundation. Not because she begged, not because I forgave too easily, but because for the first time, she wasn't hiding behind fear. She was choosing transparency over panic, presence over avoidance, courage over retreat, and that changed everything. 1 week later, she arrived again, not hesitant this time, but purposeful. "I'm ready," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For us, for real this time." I studied her posture, her certainty, her steadiness. This wasn't panic. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't fear talking. This was clarity. She sat beside me again, but this time she reached for my hand first. "I needed space before because I was lost," she said softly, "but now staying away from you feels like losing myself more." I answered with equal clarity. "Then don't run." She squeezed my hand gently. "I won't." We didn't jump back into the relationship. We rebuilt it. With intention, maturity, and honesty, we talked more, we explained more, we clarified instead of assuming. We paused instead of reacting. We approached instead of avoiding, and little by little, the invisible wall between us melted. Until one evening, when she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm home, not physically." Emotionally, in the end, the story wasn't about her blocking me. It was about why she thought she had to. It wasn't about the call from the restaurant. It was about the moment she realized safety isn't distant, it's presence. It wasn't about needing space. It was about learning the difference between escaping and breathing. And it wasn't about losing each other. It was about finding a better version of what we could be. She didn't run again. I didn't chase. We walked side by side this time, steady, clear, present. And for the first time in a long time, we understood each other. Not perfectly, but honestly, and honesty was enough.